Yes. Well, we're going to get straight on with I don't even know how to describe it. The
state visit.
The state visit, yes, on Wednesday. So let's just have a look at the reception that Volodymyr Zelensky got in Westminster Hall on Wednesday.
Thank you so much.
I couldn't inflict any more than that at this point. But the whole Parliament, Lords and Commons assembled, standing ovation for the man. But it got worse, Patrick. It got worse during the course of the speech. There was a presentation made. Let's have a look at this.
Because they are so few, they are so precious, that we, the servants of our kings, do everything possible and impossible to make the world provide us with modern planes to empower and protect pilots who will be protecting us. And I am proud of our Air Force, and I brought a present from them to you, Great Britain. Yes, please, open please. Yes. Yes. To the speaker. Yes, speaker. And I will explain. It's the helmet of a real Ukrainian pilot. He is one of our most successful aces, and he's one of our kings.
So a white helmet, and this is going to be the theme of today, white helmets. But anyway,
it's an interesting mid-1970s fighter pilot model there. So I mean, it doesn't look like it's a real or an up-to-date version. So what Ukrainian Air Force lost between 50 and 70 fighters, been shot down already.
Right.
They don't have much of an Air Force left, as far as we can tell from the numbers. So what's going on?
Well, you give a hint before the program, Patrick, because of course the white helmet on the head of a fighter pilot reminds us of the Ghost of Kyiv. But unfortunately, the Ghost of Kyiv wasn't real.
This is what Zelensky was presenting to Speaker Hoyle, was this from this so-called ace, Ukrainian ace that maneuvered around Kiev in the early days of the conflict and shot down all these Russian planes, and this was the Ghost of Kyiv. So that's effectively, it's the Ghost of Kyiv gag. This has been debunked.
Well,
a long time
on
ago.
Screen we've got the Washington Post here. This is what admirers called a Ukrainian fighter pilot who was said to have shot down 40 enemy planes. Over the weekend, Ukrainian officials admitted the Ghost, in fact, never existed.
So it was a fake story.
Fake story.
So this was propaganda to kind of get people behind the Ukrainian war effort early on. So this is one of many fake stories like Snake Island, the Ghost of Kyiv. So Zelensky actually, it looks like he pulled this gag on the Speaker of the House of Commons, complete with a prop signed by the Ghost of Kyiv pilot and everything. That's what it appears like. I mean, we don't have exact confirmation because we're dealing in smoke and mirrors here, Mike, propaganda, but that's exactly what it looks like.
Right. So Lindsay Hoyle then clearly very touched and very pleased to receive this gift. He then appeared later on with Julia Hartley. Let's have a listen to this little conversation.
I'm always very worried when, even though I think that we should provide those jets, even though I believe we should have been giving more help and we should give more help, and that the risk of not giving help is greater. I'm always very worried when we have unanimity in Parliament. We saw that over the Iraq War. I remember Parliament is all united and saying, and Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak saying we need to speak with one voice. We don't have that debate. Do you not worry about that as the Speaker of the Commons?
Well, I would say we did have that debate, There is a difference here. This is Europe. This is on our doorstep. This is where the British people have opened the doors. They have welcomed and supported the plight of Ukraine. This is about the invasion of a sovereign territory. This is about Europe. Who is next? This is a challenge to the NATO borders. But of course, as you well know, Julia, as Speaker of the House, I hold my neutrality.
Yep.
My neutrality is there to ensure, which we did. We have had many debates on Ukraine, and that is the key to it. And may we continue to do that.
So I'm not clear how you can have a debate when everybody is in agreement. but as well as that, he is name dropping there the borders of NATO. The NATO is now again, even by the Speaker of the House of Commons, being presented as some kind of, uber national or supranational organization, which has some kind of statehood, which is really quite incredible.
But he constantly invokes Europe, and you see a lot of British politicians doing this. This is striking in the heart of European democracy in Ukraine. Look, Ukraine was never regarded as part of Europe. This is borderlands, hinterlands of Europe, the Far East. Okay, Britain doesn't even regard itself as part of Europe after Brexit, but they constantly invoke this. This is an attack on the heart of Europe, European democracy. Ukraine is not a democracy, at least not at the moment. It's everything but a democracy. So, to hear these sort of tropes coming from the speaker is it's almost laughable, along with the neutrality comment, Mike. He's going to retain my neutrality on this.
Incredible. So I'm going to ask Vanessa for a comment in a second, but before we go to Vanessa, I just want to put this on screen. So this was pushed out by Bloomberg. And let's just look at a little bit of video. And what we're seeing here is a BBC reporter. So let's look at the video clip.
Mr. President, I would really like to hug you, but I'm not allowed. Why not? Please, do give me a hug,
Security.
So that was the BBC's Ukraine correspondent. Now, Vanessa, what strikes me here is we've got a parliament with no dissent. We've got a media which is hugging the president of Ukraine. Who is here to hold anybody to account?
Absolutely nobody. And I mean, it's extraordinary, the racism in the statement that the speaker just made. I mean, well, they're like us. I mean, he's echoing the early media coverage of why we should be uber sympathetic to Ukrainians is because they look like us, they sound like us, they have the same genes as us, and this is just extraordinary. I mean, I know the BBC have symbolically been hugging Al-Qaeda for 11 years in Syria, but to actually get up and hug someone that is increasing or empowering Nazis in Ukraine is just, I mean, to what level have we now stooped? I mean, it's astounding. I hadn't seen any of this because I've had my head down into everything that's going on here, but I'm speechless, actually.
Yes, the BBC, just as impartial as the Speaker of the House.
Where's the professionalism in the journalism, Mike? Look, every single thing that Zelensky says, does, right down to the T-shirt, the sweatshirt, or whatever. This is the emperor that only has one change of clothes. Everything that he does is totally staged and scripted, and it's run either out of the CIA's forward information operations or it's a British PR firm, we're not sure, or a combination thereof. There's probably Hollywood scriptwriters involved in this wag the dog total stage production. That was a staged hug. Okay, that was choreographed, that was scripted, that was for the public relations effort around Zelensky. So, I mean, if anybody thinks otherwise, you're very, very naive.
So let's look at, well, is this a PR fail? Certainly for Rishi Sunak, it looked like one, but this image has been doing the rounds of Twitter. Now, I don't agree with Ian Bremer here that the helmet suits Zelensky well. I don't think it does, but anyway, it certainly doesn't suit Rishi very well. But this was then the theme after they left. So really, the whole... So yeah, go ahead.
What's with the boots, by the way, with Sunak? Those are what, hiking boots?
Yes.
Are they combat boots? We're not sure. Are they going for hike? up in the Brecon Beacons, or what's going on here?
It's hard to say, but so this was all of the entire visit was clearly about arms and armaments. But let's have a look at what Boris had to say. It's time to give the Ukrainians the extra equipment they need to defeat Putin and restore peace to Ukraine. That means longer range missiles and artillery. It means more tanks. It means planes. We have more than 100 Typhoon jets. We have more than 100 Challenger 2 tanks. The best single use for any of these items is to deploy them now for the protection of the Ukrainians, not least because this is how we guarantee our own long-term security. So Boris, with the hairstyle, is basically saying we need to send all our tanks and all our aircraft to Ukraine immediately
to become scrap
metal.
Scrap metal. And how does that keep Britain safe to have all the tanks liquidated in the field, which they will be, and all the planes shot down like all the other airborne Ukrainian fighter jets that have been shot down? Do you have to understand the missile defense and the surface-to-air missile batteries that Russia has far outnumber and outperform anything that not only Ukraine can put on the field, then what NATO can put on the field? You're talking about S-500, S-500S, advanced surface-to-air missiles defense with ranges, Mike, of like up to 500 in miles in some cases. So to think that they're going to make any difference with deploying a few Typhoons, those Typhoons are going to end up in the scrap heap very, very quickly. This is why there is not a lot of air combat going on in that field, because it's a stalemate because of missile defense.
So what was the Russian response? Well, here's the comment from the Russian embassy in London on Zelensky's blitz visit, as they describe it. I think that's a carefully chosen headline, blitz visit to London. The hasty visit by Ukrainian Commander-in-Chief to the UK capital and his theatrical performance at Westminster were obviously aimed at preparing the Western public for upcoming decisions towards further satisfaction of the Kiev regime's constant and ever-increasing demands. But here's the key point. Zelensky's fundraising event in London would, of course, have been incomplete without begging for more weapons that Kiev has long ceased to pretend are merely defensive in nature, this time Western fighter jets. Given that NATO artillery systems have been repeatedly used by Kiev's warmongers to shell peaceful cities in the Donbass, hardly any doubts remain that Western jets, should they be provided, would also be used in air raids against residential areas of the DPR, LPR, Kherson and Zaporozhye regions and have come under Russian protection. We would like to remind London, in the event of such a scenario, the death toll of yet another round of escalation, as well as its military political consequences for the European continent and the whole world, will be on the United Kingdom's hands. Now, I'm quite sure that that statement, if it hasn't already, is going to be spun by the Western media as being a threat. I think it's a reasonable recognition of the reality.
A reasonable recognition that these weapons, these jets, will be used for provocations to escalate, Mike. And the other thing, which is total common sense, which seems to be lost on the British press and all of the sort of war drum beaters right now in Westminster and beyond, is that all of these Ukrainian pilots have been trained, probably all of them, on MiG fighters. What are they going to all of a sudden overnight be able to fly Typhoons or British fighters? It's a joke. You'll have to do what Saudi Arabia did, use U.S. pilots and U.S. planes and paint Saudi flags on the side, okay, with U.S. reconnaissance doing targeting, satellite, with U.S. air traffic handlers and engineers and TAC teams.
Yeah.
It's a joke. So the British are going to have to provide the full package of support.
Indeed.
It's not going to be hand them the fighters and they'll fly them.
Not after 2 weeks of training in the UK.
How cynical to put that on the public and think that people are going to swallow that whole is pretty unbelievable.
Right, Vanessa, we're going to move on to the earthquake in Syria, but have you got any just final thoughts on this before we do?
No, only that there was a recent article in Air and Space Forces magazine about the transition in Ukraine to using F-16s would be similar to that in Romania. But as one paragraph stated in the magazine, it took Romania a decade to transition to the F-16. So as you just mentioned, the training pilots in 2 weeks isn't going to be very successful.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, well, let's